Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And this is an area I'm particularly passionate about. And if, when I was younger, only my ability matched my enthusiasm, I would have had a career in sport and not been stood here now. But we are very fortunate. We have two of our most effective, best ministers who can make things happen. So to be helpful, and the whips know how helpful I am, I have a shopping list. So get your pens ready. And at this stage, though, the whips probably best cover their ears, because my first ever rebellion was successful. It was on the sports premium. So the former government, the former Labour government, had introduced it at the time they secured the Olympics, 150 million a year. It was under very real threat. And the reason it was under threat was because before the Labour government had introduced it, only 2 out of 5 school children were regularly active. And by the end of this sort of programme, it was still 2 out of 5. So it seemed an obvious thing that it hadn't moved the dial. But what it hadn't appreciated, or the government hadn't at the time appreciated, was the impact on the other 3 out of 5, who were frankly doing absolutely nothing before, still not doing enough, but were certainly doing more than nothing. And rightly, the government did U-turn on that, not only secured the £150 million, but then doubled it to 300. It's now gone up to 320 million, and I join with everyone who is encouraging a long-term commitment to see that in place. And it is important because we know only 42.2% of young people are active 60 minutes or more a day. And it is frightening that 22.7, heaven knows how little, if at all, that they are doing. Now, firstly, with schools, part of the problem there is a lack of PE teachers. There is a lack of confidence. The previous speaker highlighted that, and I welcome the changes that have been doing in the initial teacher training, and I pay tribute to the Minister of State for Education, because myself and my honourable friend from Mansfield raised in a recent Westminster Hall debate an offer from the Professional Footballers Association, who support thousands of ex-footballers, male and female, in looking at their next career, and they were keen to encourage teaching as a route and offering to support some of the associated costs. And to the credit of the Minister, he met us very, very quickly, and his team are working with the PFA, and that will hopefully see an increase in people who have that confidence and knowledge in PE and other areas of teaching. I also want to see school facilities opened up. Now, this was something I raised with the Prime Minister during the negotiations in the latest show of our Leadership X Factor contest last year. This was my big ask. And the reason being, in all of our communities, we have some examples of some fantastic sports facilities, but some of those are behind lock and key. Or even when you can access them, they come at a huge cost that price out volunteers who are willing to give up their time. Now, when I was younger, people didn't think anything of sending children, or maybe it was just my parents, sending us off for 16 miles for a day without having to report back. Understandably, and I'm a parent now, people are very conscious about keeping sight of their children playing in safe areas. Gardens are a third smaller than they were in the 1960s. So we need every last good, safe facility to be opened. And frankly, any group that provide constructive activities, which would be predominantly sport, should have access for free towards those school facilities. We, the taxpayers, have already paid for them. In planning new schools, we should look to help integrate some sports that would benefit from dual use, particularly where they have specific design needs. It's very difficult for gym clubs, gymnastics clubs, to find buildings with sufficient roofs and parking, same for athletics tracks and many other sports. We should encourage sports camps. In my constituency, the Draycott Sports Camp regularly attracts over 250 children, slightly more girls than boys, during the school holidays. Incredibly popular, not just with the children, but also with the parents who are fretting about what on earth do they do with their children during the holidays. And Mark Draycott, who set that business up, who was also a teacher, benefited from having a favourable deal with the school, which made it open and accessible, and also for having the skill set to engage those who aren't involved in competitive sport. It's a fun sports camp, and he has helped shape some of the early thinking around the Holiday Activities Fund scheme, and I want to see that continue to be expanded. And I pay tribute to St Andrews Parish Council and Hayden Wick Parish Council that topped up the 4 hours provision provided through the government scheme to make sure all of the children on free school meals actually had a full day access to that. I want to now turn to the community, first of all put on record, and we all would echo this, the thank you to the thousands of volunteers and professional staff who provide the opportunities for people to get involved. We all know of them in social media, and I know we all believe everything that is on social media. And yesterday I saw a picture of a drenched child and his parents, and the parents are saying thank you so much for actually, in all weathers, making those opportunities come forward. And I want to also just pay a personal tribute to Roy Heather, who had been a long-standing, much-respected volunteer at Swindon Supermarine Football Club, who we sadly lost last year. He was a true gentleman and typified everything that is good about the voluntary sports sector. Now, I know there is an appetite for more in this area. I host an annual summer activities fair every year in front of my office, where we get lots of different, predominantly sports teams and clubs and organisations coming forward to say to parents, I know you've got 6 weeks and you've got to entertain your children, this is what we can do to help with that burden. And we have hundreds of parents and children coming along and signing up for different activities, and it's something I would encourage all my colleagues to do. On planning, and this has been mentioned by particularly my honourable friend for Chatham and Aylesford, we need to make sure there is sufficient usable space. In Swindon, we've had loads of new housing developments. We make sure that is a given. Those green, usable lungs are incredibly popular. We need to make sure the sports facilities promised are delivered. In the case of Tadpole Garden Village, perhaps unsurprisingly, the developers are doing that last, not at the beginning. All play parks needs to be accessible, and as part of the disability commitments, we are going to make play parks accessible. I pay tribute to Becky Madden and Moms on a Mission for supporting me. And as I said, let's look at all those sports who have particular design needs to make sure they're put in place. On leisure centres, I echo the comments around energy costs and supporting them. It's really, really important we do that and share best practice. And coming to my conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are lots of success stories where we empower sports groups and community groups to take ownership of facilities so they can secure grants, charitable status, benefit from their volunteers, the extra enthusiasm and motivation. We should champion that. And finally, the fan-led review, tribute to my friend for Chatham and Aylesford for bringing that forward. We need to make sure it happens, and we need to make sure that we preserve what we are so good at in this country.
Ben Bradley.